Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. Boa Hancock, in order to protect her companions and stay close to Luffy, might join the Straw Hats, and the most incredible part would be the crew's reaction to this event, which we'll see in today's video. I hope for your support to help our crew win, and to do so, you just need to click the thumbs up button, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. By doing this, you will win an incredible devil fruit, so just comment which fruit you want. Guys, if we really take a look deep inside what makes Zoro be Zoro, the first thing that stands out is that, at his core, he's a walking shield. He's not just about swords or strength. He's the kind of person you look at and understand that if Luffy were ever to falter, Zoro would already be standing in his place. But not to take his place, never that. Just to keep the flame alive until the captain returns. This becomes crystal clear in chapter 485, when he kneels and begs Kuma to spare Luffy and take everything from him instead. It wasn't just about loyalty. That moment was about protecting a dream that wasn't even his, because he understands what it means to have someone believe in you so much they'd take your pain in your place. So when we add Boa Hancock to the equation, a figure who, despite being immensely powerful, moves almost entirely out of a love that floats between infatuation and obsession, it's impossible not to think that Zoro would, at the very least, be suspicious. Not out of disdain, but on principle. Maybe he wouldn't say anything at first. Zoro's not the type to speak much, but he watches silently. And if what he saw began to disrupt the crew's balance, or threaten Luffy's independence, I think he wouldn't hesitate to act. That's the thing. Zoro is straightforward but not impulsive. He's strategic in an almost primal way. He smells trouble before it arrives, and if Boa Hancock tried to join the crew under the pretense of helping, but deep down only wanted to stay close to Luffy, I think he'd notice that immediately. Maybe he'd let it slide at first, observing, testing, because to be fair, Hancock is powerful. She defeated several Marines with a snap of her fingers and turned people to stone like it was child's play. And Zoro respects strength. He's never the type to underestimate an opponent. He knows when he's facing someone dangerous. But her power wouldn't be the problem, it would be the direction of that power. And here comes the dilemma. Is she here to contribute, or is she here to distract? Maybe Zoro would begin questioning that with every little gesture from Hancock, because unlike Sanji, who would absolutely be drooling at her feet from the first second Zoro isn't swayed by looks or charm. This is clear in chapter 213 when he faces Bon Clay. Even when the enemy uses tricks, disguises, and emotional theatrics, Zoro focuses on what matters, the intention behind the action. He reads people's energy. If Hancock started treating Luffy like a precious little ornament, offering him gifts, trying to protect him from everything, maybe he'd start to feel that what she was offering wasn't love. It was disguised control. And for someone like Zoro, that's unacceptable. Because if there's one thing Zoro values above all else, it's freedom. The freedom to be who you are, even in chaos. The freedom to choose your own path, to fall and rise on your own. He says it himself during his fight with Ryoma in Thriller Bark, chapter 467. When he holds the Shusui sword in his hands, he understands that real strength isn't just about cutting, it's about conviction. And if Hancock wanted to join the crew with the wrong conviction driven by possessiveness instead of purpose, he would sense that as a disturbance. Now maybe, just maybe, things would really start heating up if Hancock tried to interfere with Luffy's decisions. Because for Zoro, that's a red line. That's personal. He doesn't talk much, but when Luffy decides something, no matter how absurd, Zoro respects it. He always has. Even when he disagreed, like back in Alabasta, when Luffy insisted on fighting Crocodile head-on, even after losing badly. Zoro could have said it was suicide, but he didn't. He trusted him. And if Hancock, even with the best intentions, started trying to convince Luffy that he doesn't need to fight, he doesn't need to take risks, I can handle this for you, Zoro might see that as an attempt to disarm the captain, and that he would not let slide. We need to remember that Zoro is not just the first mate. He's both the brakes and the accelerator. When Luffy is about to do something too impulsive, Zoro is the only one with the guts to pull him back to reality. But when Luffy decides to go all in, Zoro is the first to say, then let's go together. He's the balance. And Hancock, despite all her strength, is emotionally unbalanced. That's not a criticism. It's a fact. She lost her footing because of Luffy. She fell in love with someone who doesn't return her feelings romantically. And even so, she moves the world forward. Is that beautiful? Maybe. But it's also dangerous. Because those who love too much sometimes don't measure the weight of their actions. Because the Straw Hats are a family, but they're also a system that functions on mutual trust. And everyone there has their clearly defined role. No one has to be better than anyone else. Sanji cooks, Usopp invents, Franky builds, Brook entertains, Chopper heals. Rob Robin watches and protects. Nami charts the course. And Luffy lives at the center of it all with a goofy smile and an almost animal instinct. When someone new arrives, that balance is tested. It's always been that way. We saw it with Franky back in Enies Lobby. He had to be defeated before he was accepted. We saw it with Brook in Thriller Bark. He had to show who he really was. We even saw it with Jinbei. Despite being a legendary fishman, he had to wait for the right time. If Hancock's entrance were purely driven by her desire to be near Luffy, it might feel like a key trying to force the wrong lock. Not out of ill will, but out of mismatch. And the one who would sense that mismatch first would be Nami, not because she'd be jealous or competitive. Nami isn't that kind of character, but because she understands Luffy in a different way. She reads his mood, his silences, his smiles. She knows when he's uncomfortable, even if he says he's fine. And if Hancock started smothering Luffy with care, maybe Nami would be the first to pull him aside and ask, "Are you really okay?" Because Nami knows that Luffy is like the wind. He can't be caged. And if someone tries, even with love, he'll start to lose himself. Maybe not right away, but he'll become quieter, less impulsive, less Luffy. Chopper might not notice at first. He'd probably see Hancock as amazing, powerful, almost regal. But over time, maybe he'd start noticing that Luffy was more tired, less spontaneous. And then he'd start to worry. Because to Chopper, the crew's emotional health is just as important as their physical health. And Luffy to him is more than a captain. He's a big brother, a hero, a symbol of brute strength and childish kindness. If Luffy started hesitating, Chopper would feel it. And even without understanding everything, maybe he'd quietly approach Zoro, trying to find out if he was seeing the same thing too. Sanji, on the other hand, would be a whole different problem. Because he would fall under Hancock's charms from the very first second. Not just fall, he would faint. Literally, he wouldn't be able to see any flaw in her, at least at the beginning. Everything she said would seem right. Everything she did, perfect. But Sanji is also a strategist. When the charm wore off a little, he might start thinking more rationally. And when he noticed that Luffy was less free, less joyful, maybe he would force himself to admit that beauty and intention don't always go hand in hand. And then maybe he would start talking to Nami, because the two of them have that silent connection. They understand when something is going wrong. Robin, on the other hand, would probably notice everything from the start. She wouldn't say anything. She wouldn't be direct, but she would observe with her calm, kind gaze, but with a calculating undertone. Robin sees patterns, conspiracies, invisible networks, and if she saw that Hancock was trying to shape Luffy into the image of a protected prince, she might start mentally filing that away. And if it was ever necessary, she would speak with precision, without emotion, like someone who has seen the world fall many times and learned to recognize the first tremors. Usopp might be torn. He has a huge respect for Luffy, but he also has a chronic fear of anything intense. And Hancock is intense. Maybe he wouldn't know how to act. Maybe he would try to side with her, trying to avoid conflict. But at the same time, he would start missing Luffy's laughter, the sudden bursts of joy, the absurd ideas. If that started to fade, Usopp would feel that something was wrong. And maybe it would be Franky, because Franky is practically the one who holds the ship's sanity together. He sees everything through the eyes of a builder. If a structure starts to tremble, he hears it before the others. And Hancock, despite being powerful, might be vibrating on the wrong frequency for that environment. Brook might try to break the tension with jokes, but even he in silence would notice the change. Because Brook is music, and music changes when a new instrument enters without knowing the right key. He would hear the discomfort in Luffy's laughter, in the pauses between his shouts, in the nights when Luffy slept less. Because if there's one thing Brook understands, it's timing. He's been alone for decades. He knows when someone is trying to hold back inside, and then maybe we would reach the most delicate point, Luffy himself. Luffy might not notice anything at first. He's simple, even naive. He thinks that everyone who likes him is there for the right reason. And Hancock really likes him, a lot, but she likes him in a way that demands something in return. Even if she says she doesn't, she expects Luffy to see her as a woman, as a partner, as something more. And Luffy doesn't see that, and maybe he never will, because Luffy doesn't understand this kind of love. He doesn't see romance like others do. He sees people, and what drives him is the freedom to be who he is. If Hancock starts to get upset because she's not being noticed, if she starts demanding attention, affection, exclusivity, Luffy might feel an unease. He doesn't know how to explain. Maybe he would start becoming quieter, more withdrawn, not out of fear, but out of doubt, and that would be the beginning of the implosion. And Zoro would feel all of this, like he always has. And maybe one day he would call Luffy for a talk, alone, on the deck, at night, when the sea is calm. Zoro might say, "Captain, are you still free?" Just that? Because Zoro doesn't lecture, he only asks what needs to be asked. And maybe Luffy would respond, "Of course I am," but with a hesitant tone. And Zoro would understand that no, something has changed. changed. Someone is trying to shape the wind. And then maybe he would go straight to Hancock without raising his voice, without threatening, just to say, do you want to be here to protect him or to keep him? Because those are different things. Protecting is staying alongside. Keeping is locking up. And if her answer was wrong, Zoro might draw his sword, not to use it, but to remind. Because Zoro's sword is not just a weapon, it's a symbol. It cuts lies, wrong intentions, crooked paths. It doesn't need to leave the sheath to be heard. And Hancock would understand that in that crew, Luffy is the sun, and Zoro is the shadow that doesn't let anyone extinguish that light. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.